Creating and working from a dissertation outline. This video is presented by the University of Texas at Arlington's Office of Graduate Studies. At this stage in your career, you probably have lots of practice creating outlines to help you plan your writing. But maybe you haven't used an outline in a long time, or you haven't revisited the basics in a while. Or maybe you've never really felt outlines were necessary for your writing. Maybe you've been teaching how to use outlines to your students, and you've never really had a chance to actually put the theory into practice in your own work. In any case, at this stage in your career, you may find it useful to revisit the basics of outlining in order to remember how useful outlines are at every stage in the writing process. If you're stuck or frustrated, or an outline can help you to remember your purpose and get back on track. Many writers believe that outlines help their writing become more efficient and effective, whether they're brainstorming new ideas, drafting new writing around existing ideas, or revising existing written drafts. And all three of these processes are important for dissertation writing. So that's what we'll talk about in this presentation. Here you're going to revisit the basics of outlining and learn once again, or maybe for the first time, what an outline is and when it's useful, the importance of outlines at every stage in the writing process, including the beginning, middle, and end, and how a reverse outline can help you to revise your writing thoughtfully and methodically. The basics of outlining for dissertation success. An outline is a way to help you brainstorm, organize, plan, and revise your ideas. In other words, they're useful at every single stage in the writing process. Whether you're beginning to organize your ideas, whether you're first writing them down for the first time, or whether you wish to revise existing ideas, an outline can help you with every stage. Outlines are not just for beginning writers either. Even as a dissertation writer like you, you'll benefit from taking a step back and looking over the structure of your work. No matter how you use outlines, their main benefit is always the same. Many ideas are reduced to short summaries, allowing you to see them all at a glance. When writers look at an outline, they're able to see important features like patterns, relationships, and organization with a simplicity that's impossible in the written draft. In other words, revision is just simply very, very difficult without an outline. So the point here is that an outline takes your inspired jumble of ideas, and I'm sure it is very inspired, and it helps you to organize them into an easy-to-read and compelling organization. Some might say this process takes chaotic ideas and imposes a logical and thoughtful order upon them. Dissertation committees love to read logically organized writing because it shows that you care not only about conducting interesting research, which of course you do, but that you also care about communicating this research to an audience in a way that is clear and easy to read. So this picture on the right is an example of how I use my own outlines, and I'll talk a little bit about how this is organized, but there are so many ways to construct an outline that could be useful for your own work. One place where an outline might be especially useful to you is when you're stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed, and of course, as writers, you have these moments all of the time. So in moments like that, it's useful to stop and ask yourself, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to claim in this chapter? What am I trying to do in this section or in this paragraph? You should always keep in mind the main point that you wish to claim, but sometimes as you're writing, the main point can get away from you. So write it down in a short, abbreviated sentence or phrase, and then ask yourself, what is my main source of evidence to support the claim? Is it laboratory data? Is it primary sources? Do I have quotations from other people? Or am I using secondary sources like articles or books? Finally, evidence never speaks for itself, so a good writer will always explain clearly how or why the evidence supports the claim. How do you plan to explain or interpret your evidence? So these are, of course, really simple and straightforward ideas, many of which you've probably encountered again and again, but it's always useful to take a step back and sort of start from the beginning again, especially in moments when you're stuck or frustrated or overwhelmed. David Kornhaber from the Harvard College Writing Center suggests thinking about outlines by asking yourself, if I were to file my ideas into a database, what would I file them under? This is a really useful strategy that can help you decide whether your idea is a claim, whether it's evidence, or whether it's analysis. And it can also help you decide which claims your evidence supports or which topic any given discussion belongs to. Depending on your own stage, you may be so involved in the details of your research and writing that it's hard to see the bigger picture. Reverse outlines are the perfect strategy for making you take the necessary step back from your own sort of detailed work to examine the large-scale organization of your chapter, section, or paragraph. In a reverse outline, you take your existing writing and summarize the main topic or claim of each paragraph. Once you've made a reverse outline, you'll be able to examine the order and logic of your ideas very easily, and therefore you can make decisions about how to reorganize your writing to make it easier for your dissertation committee to understand you. Your reverse outline also might reveal problems that you hadn't noticed before, and this is a really useful technique for identifying problems that are sort of buried beneath the surface as you're writing. For example, it will be really easy to see items that are out of place. So your reverse outline will help you to consider where to move items that seem out of place to somewhere that seems more logical. Also, if you're trying to come up with the summary or central topic of a paragraph and you have a lot of difficulty, well, that might be evidence that there is some kind of internal problem going on. You might have too many ideas, for example, in your paragraph, and so it might be useful to consider breaking them up. Or you might have too few ideas in a paragraph, and you might just consider cutting the entire paragraph. So again, these are strategies for working with and creating an outline as you're writing as a way to kind of sort of take a step back and see the larger picture of your writing. And I suggest, even though this seems very basic, to always be going through this process and looking at the larger picture of your writing. So these are an important part of the writing process, and they'll be really helpful if you're stuck or frustrated or overwhelmed. So in this video, we talked about how an outline can be useful at any stage of the writing process, whether the beginning, middle, or end, and how these are useful for writers at any stage in their career, whether novice, experienced, or expert writers, or dissertation writers for that matter. We also talked about how to draft paragraphs, sections, or potentially even whole chapters using an outline process. Finally, we talked about how drafting a reverse outline can be a good way to begin revising your writing, because you'll be able to see the structure of your writing at a glance. So we hope this topic is useful to you, and thank you for watching, and of course, happy writing!